Hi guys, Alan Gilday here from Create Your Abundance. So in the previous video we were examining the notion and exploring the notion together that the implications of what if our true nature isn't just that we're, kind of meat suits running around, okay, but that our true nature, if you come at this, through a spiritual point of view or through quantum physics or whatever, many different traditions seem to kind of overlap, suggesting that our true nature is really that we're an energetic being. We're more than just the physical body that we inhabit. I know that that's a controversial thing, and some of you will agree and some of you will disagree, and then we could discuss the boundaries of those notions probably endlessly, as many enlightened people have done for millennia. But Yoda reckoned that beings of light are we, and that's kind of pretty good for me. I roll with Yoda most of the time. So the key thing that James Redfield was talking about in the Celestine Prophecy was how we compete for this energy. Once we're disconnected from our source, we tend to, which is within us, as the masters have taught us, we tend then to feel inadequate and disconnected, and this leads to a certain kind of anxiety and uneasiness. And in order to overcome that, we feed the illusion of our separate ego through competing for energy, from leeching energy off other people. In some instances, as we looked at previously, one of the ways in which we do that is to run various control dramas. We run various different control dramas, one of which is the intimidator. We looked at when somebody intimidates you, or when I intimidate somebody else, you get this kind of kick, this energy kick, by dominating that other person. Now, we don't have to go to kind of criminal or perverse extents in this trait to actually sort of see this at work in our own lives. It can be very much at work just in the way we relate to our partners or our colleagues at work, in day-to-day domestic and business life. But the second thing I wanted to have a look at, the second key control drama, is according to Redfield, and I think it's a pertinent insight, is that we become aloof. And again, this becomes a way in which we can demand attention of other people. Now, it's maybe a little bit sophomoric, a little bit teenagey, a bit juvenile, but I can see that in my own life, that at times when I felt insecure or vulnerable or scared, I've affected a kind of aloofness in order to kind of appear higher than or greater than, as if the situation that I'm in is actually beneath my dignity in some shape or form. And it's an affectation which is actually hiding a vulnerability. And the classic place for this, of course, is at sort of, the parties that we go to, especially when we're younger. And, when you're at a party, what do you want? You really want to meet somebody that, you're attracted to and that they're attracted to you too. I mean, that's the key thing when you're young and you're going to parties. That's what it's all about. Obviously, you want to have fun, let your hair down, make friends, hang out, chill out. But obviously, the mating game is a really big part of that. And that kind of that agenda can be quite intimidating. You get into that sort of biological imperative, and you see so many competitors, alpha males, alpha females, and so it reminds me a little bit of those natural history programs where you see sort of various species competing to be the ones who actually get to mate and propagate the gene pool. And that, in a sort of comedic way, is very much what's happening at parties. And we have various different ways of coping with these things, and obviously one of them is through drugs and alcohol. And that's, I remember hearing one neurologist, some boffin, was talking about how the brain works, and he said, look, one of the most difficult things for the brain to compute is how to behave at a party. And he said there's so many different things going on. There's a lot of sexual stimulus, there's a lot of acoustic stimulus, there's maybe drugs, there's drink, there's alcohol, there's hormones. There's different social hierarchies that are hard for us to relegate and to order. We're keen to make a very big impression, so our ego is kind of thrashing about trying to work out the balance between being cool and being noticed. And of course, like the old Zen archers thing of whenever you're shooting for a target, it's so much harder to hit. Um, it's very much the case that when you're there and trying to make a good impression, you know, you can come across like a bit of a dick or an idiot. Okay, so there's all those particular stresses that are very hard for the brain to compute, especially with the confusion of that environment going on. And so we take recourse sometimes, as I say, in alcohol, drugs, and the music is another big thing because that gets us off the hook of having to communicate. Um, but one of the other things, obviously, eventually getting to the point here, is that we can often affect this aloofness, and you'll see that at dinner parties or social gatherings. Somebody who's kind of like, "Wow, aren't they distant and interesting and aloof and mysterious?" And that's exactly what that little control drama is trying to do. It's trying to get our attention and draw it to themselves rather than intimidating. They're using an aloof pattern, and 9 times out of 10, maybe higher, it's done unconsciously. We're not actually saying to ourselves, "Hey, I'm disconnected from the core of my being, therefore I feel out of balance, out of kilter, disconnected, sort of I need therefore to realign myself. I will affect a certain control drama in order to leech energy from other beings." Of course we don't say that to ourselves, but that is, I believe, a useful model to at least outline the dynamics of what's happening. So, have you ever experienced that kind of aloofness? Have you ever utilized it yourself? You know, have you ever been the mean, moody, interesting, distant one? Or have you encountered that yourself in some sort of relationship or party or scenario? Have you been repelled by it, or have you been drawn by it? What are your experiences in this regard? So in the future then, let's have a look at a couple more of these different control dramas and insights. But I think next what would be good to look at is some of James Redfield's other insights as to how the nature of our energetic being can be vitalized and engaged so that we can liberate ourselves and each other from these control dramas. And essentially what he's saying is, if we become conscious of the things, then we can flag them up to ourselves and to those that we love respectfully, and in love and compassion and respect, in order that we can then start using that energy consciously, drawing it from within ourselves, from that kingdom of heaven within, that source, that chi energy if you're coming from an Eastern tradition, and actually draw it out of ourselves and pour it consciously where it needs to be poured and focused.